Hi there, students. An uprising, a rebellion, a revolution, upheaval, and a mutiny. What's the difference between these? Okay, let's see. An uprising, I think, is spontaneous resistance against authority. That a situation becomes unbearable and a group of people suddenly say, no, we're not going to accept this. And it's an uprising. It's a general term for refusal to obey authority. I think a rebellion is something that is much more organised. An uprising is much more spontaneous, whereas a rebellion is planned. And I think also in a rebellion, the rebels, the plotters, want to overthrow the government. They want to get rid of the authority. Now, very often a rebellion leads to revolution. And revolution talks about a fundamental change in the political structure of a country. For example, the Russian Revolution or the French Revolution. Both of these were, first of all, there was a rebellion, and then this overthrew the monarchy. The monarchy went out, and a new government run by the people came into place. After that, in France came a dictatorship. But anyway, so a revolution, it's got a significant change in the system. An upheaval is... upheavals are much more general, and notice upheaval is more commonly uncountable. Upheaval talks about big changes in a system, changes in a society. So, for example, you could say if you're married and you have a baby, the baby causes upheaval in the family, or upheaval, it's to heave upwards, literally. An earthquake is an upheaval of the ground, but upheaval, strong disturbance, social, political, economic changes, but not necessarily organised. An upheaval could be organised, but upheaval is great change. It might be from an uprising or a rebellion or a revolution, but it could be because there's no rain, so there's no food is grown, or large numbers of refugees come into your country, and this causes upheaval. The final one is mutiny. A mutiny is where the army or the navy refuse to obey the orders of their officers. So, for example, on board a ship, if the crew mutiny, very often they will kill the captain or they will throw him overboard, and the crew take charge of the ship. Very often an uprising could start with a mutiny. That the army is being so badly treated that suddenly there is an uprising. There is a spontaneous resistance by the soldiers, and they shoot their officers. A rebellion is perhaps an organised mutiny, that there are people who are planning this, and I think a mutiny comes from the ranks. It comes from the lowest soldiers upwards because they're being treated badly. A rebellion is where certain officers say we don't like this system, and the army can rebel against the government. So this would be a rebellion. The revolution is when there is serious change, and the revolution causes upheaval, big change. So I think the mutiny is a military uprising, a military rebellion. Okay, so let's see. An uprising, an act of opposition. Very often there's got violence by many people in just one specific area of the country against the people who are in power. This is some sort of insurrection. Yeah, it's opposition against authority, against the status quo. A rebellion is planned. It's action against the people who rule, against the normal ways of behaving. A rebellion is not obeying the orders of authority. Rebellion, violent action, violent organised action by a group trying to change the political system. Rebellion, a strong disagreement with the people in authority. Okay, the people who refuse to accept the power of the government. A revolution is where this rebellion goes further and it's successful and it causes a big change in the society, a big change in the way the country is governed, in the political system. And very often this comes after a revolution, after a civil war or internal war. So yes, the French Revolution changed France from a monarchy to a republic. A significant change in the way things are done. Then upheaval. Upheaval is great change. Big changes that very often cause a lot of difficulty for people. And very often a revolution or a rebellion, this is one type of upheaval. But there are many other types of upheaval. Maybe the miners' strike in the 1970s caused a lot of political upheaval. And then a mutiny is where the soldiers or the sailors refuse to obey orders. Okay, or perhaps a mutiny in a prison. Okay, the conditions on the ship were very bad and the crews mutinied. They murdered the captain, they mutinied against their officers, refusal to obey orders, a violent attempt to take control on a ship, for example. So let's see. A pro-democracy uprising was brutally suppressed. The Hungarian uprising in 1956 was suppressed by the Soviet Union. So this is an uprising. It's a spontaneous act of fighting against the system. A rebellion. So Simon de Montfort rose in rebellion in 1256. So this is more than an uprising. And I think a rebellion is a very organised uprising. A revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the People's Revolution in China. And then upheaval, violent disturbance, disorder, social upheaval, political upheaval. Moving house can be a great upheaval. And then a mutiny, the Indian Mutiny, where the soldiers refused to obey the orders of the officers. Mutiny on the Bounty, where the crew of a ship take control of the ship. So I think I'm going to give all of these words a 6 informality, but use them anywhere. Okay? So uprising, rebellion, revolution, upheaval, and mutiny. Bye for now.